Ah yes, another glorious Russian premium cruiser. This time the Krasny Krym at tier 5. Hey, wait, hold on a minute. This looks like a Svetlana. Wait, this is a Svetlana. But it's at tier 5 now? Wait, what's going on here? Well, you will find out soon just what secrets this ship holds. Basically a Svetlana. Why would they put a Svetlana at tier 5? Anyways, folks, I'll just do how the reviews normally go. I'll go through the port view, I'll talk about all the stats and all the little things about the ship, and then, of course, I will go into battle and I will share my wisdom about this ship in battle with all of you. So, without much further hesitation, let's review the Krasny Krym. Alright, let's first take a look at the Krasny Krym in port, and, well, she's kind of meh. Take a look at her HP, 25,100. That's the second lowest out of any of the tier 5 cruisers, so nothing spectacular there. Armor, well, Citadel armor is thin at places. The maximum is 75 millimeters, which is not terrible. Forward and after ends is not bad. 10 being sort of standard among other tier 5 cruisers, but 75 is actually pretty good. Deck, however, of 20-25 millimeters is a little bit on the thin side. Armor, nothing really to write home about, but it's okay. The guns on the ship are, oh boy, a major disappointment is one way to put it. It sucks is another way to put it, because comparatively speaking, you have the tiniest, smallest guns out of any of the tier 5 cruisers. The Omahas have 152 millimeter guns. Kirov has 180, Furutaka has 203s. You're stuck with 130 millimeter destroyer guns. Basically, these are the same guns that you'll see on ships like the Nievny. Yeah, you have a bunch more of them, but you're a cruiser and you're essentially packing destroyer guns. There are little certain perks to these guns. I mean, they do benefit from basic firing training, advanced firing training, so they do reload a little bit faster with skills, and they do have decent range. However, hitting stuff with these shells is pretty pathetic, as your damage output really isn't that great against anything excluding destroyers. But let's take a look at the stats in detail for the guns, and then you can make a judgment on whether or not you think these things are any good. So let's take a look. First things first, reload time 9.2 seconds. Oh. That is a really pathetic reload speed for 130 millimeter guns. If you take a look at the Murmansk, 152 millimeter guns reloads every 7 seconds. Makes you seriously wonder if the Krasny Krym's gunners are all consuming an obscene amount of Krispy Kreme donuts and are way too overweight to actually operate the guns properly. Then you take a look at the actual shells that the guns are firing. 1900 max HE damage, 8% chance of fire. The only thing that's worse than this is the pathetic HE of the German Königsberg, which, by the way, even though it's got absolutely pathetic HE, it still fires faster. So, compare it to, let's say, the Murmansk, which is the other amazing Soviet premium ship, which is really an American ship, just somehow using glorious Russian shells, but that's another story for another day. Murmansk, for example, 2200 HE shell damage, 12% chance of fire. Very respectable, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, 7-second reload. Kirov, yes, heavy cruiser guns. Reload heavy cruiser speed, 15 seconds, but 2500 HE shell damage, 13% chance of fire. And of course, if we look at the Furutaka, 203 millimeter guns, 15-second reload, 3300 damage, 17% chance of fires. So, Krasny Krym's guns, not great for fires, just low fire chance and not great HE damage. What about AP? 2500 AP shell damage. Compare again to Murmansk, and you see AP damage 3100. Kirov, AP damage 4100. Furutaka's AP damage 4700. And what about the Königsberg, which had horrible HE? Königsberg, 3900 AP. So the Krasny Krym, you hit somebody with AP, you get Citadel. Nothing to write home about, as you're only doing 2500 max damage per shell for every Citadel hit you make. So nothing to write home about. The one redeeming feature of the guns is the rather high muzzle velocity, which means that the shells do travel in a relatively flat arc. So guns, very, very, very meh. There is one particular way of playing the ship, but I'll get to that when I actually get into battle. Her secondary armament, well, she's got 3 of these dual 100mm guns, and, well, they're nothing to write home about either. They fire once every 5 seconds, they do 1400 max HE damage, firing range is a pretty dismal 4 kilometers. Again, they do benefit from BFT and AFT, but yeah, the secondaries are just nothing great. And in fact, the forward secondary gun being there actually eliminates your use of the 130mm gun behind it if you're trying to bow in and fire. So that gun actually is not usable until you actually swing your ship out more to the broadside. So that's that kind of sucks as well, having that annoying secondary turret there. Then let's go and talk about Torpedo. She has torpedoes. I mean, she's got 2 of these triple 533mm torpedoes. They actually do pretty solid damage, 13,200, and they are pretty fast. They go 65 knots. They have a range of 3.7 kilometers. Unless you want to be Suicidal Destroyer, you're really never going to be using those torpedoes. So, well, I mean, I've managed to use them. It's just that 3.7 kilometer torpedoes. Such a brutal range. Alright, so does anything redeem it? Maybe A? The answer is no. The Krasny Krym has a couple of these 12.7mm machine guns. They have an awful range of 1.2 kilometers, so good luck ever having that DPS factor into anything. She does have a couple of these Vickers machine guns, 4 damage per second on average, 1.2 kilometer range. Again, pretty pathetic. And then we move on, and yes, you've got some of these 37mm autocannons, 57 average damage per second, 3.2 kilometer range. Again, not that great. And then finally, of course, those secondary turrets, they're dual purpose. They also function as AA guns. A pitiful 4 kilometer range doing 14 DPS. Krasny Krym, AA, pretty much on par with most of the other tier 5s, but god-awful overall. Oh, and then let's talk about maneuverability, because you figure that she should have at least one thing that's redeeming, right? Like maybe speed, because, you know, most of the other cruisers are pretty fast. Like, let's say the Murmansk goes 34, Kirov goes 35.5, Krasny Krym, 29 knots. Makes you wonder if this ship just ate way too many Krispy Kreme donuts and now can't run to save its life. Seriously, 29 knots is the slowest of any of the tier 5 cruisers. The Königsberg goes 32.5, Furutaka is 34.5, Omaha goes 34, so if you got into a fight with another cruiser, you are never, ever, ever, ever running away from them. Ever. Do I need another ever in there? Probably not. But you're never running away from another cruiser. So if they start to chase you, good luck with that. You might as well just bow in and start rushing at them and hope your torpedoes can take care of them. Assuming the enemy doesn't have torpedoes either. But anyways, okay, moving on. In terms of the Krasny Krym's ability to do donuts in the water, aka her turning circle radius, 590 meters is actually pretty decent. She is able to make the smallest donut out of all the tier 5 cruisers, on par with the Murmansk, and just a tiny bit better than the Omaha or the Marblehead, which are both at 600. So the turning radius is good, but then you look at the rudder shift time and you see 7.2 seconds. What the hell? 7.2 seconds is really, really, really slow rudder, because when you compare it to the Murmansk and you see 3.8 seconds, you question why the ship was put into the game. Maybe they just wanted to make us make Krispy Kreme donut jokes. Who knows? Okay, moving on from maneuverability, and we'll talk about concealment, because you have a ship that's pretty much got horrible guns, got pretty terrible speed, and torpedoes that really aren't worth the damn, and a rudder that kind of sucks, and you kind of sort of sit there and you go, maybe she's super stealthy. And the answer to that question is nope. Surface detectability 13.3 kilometers because somebody thought it was a fantastic idea to cram this humongous superstructure onto the ship. Had the ship had maybe Svetlana's surface detectability of 9.9, I would have maybe forgiven them for it. But Krasny Krym 13.3, you're going to get spotted from miles and miles and miles away. Alright, so moving on. Maybe she's got some unique consumable. Maybe let's think a smoke, perhaps? Nope. You don't have smoke. You have damage control party, and you have hydroacoustic search. Hydroacoustic search on the Russian ship. Again, nothing spectacular to write home about, nothing special about the consumables, so maybe she has a special upgrade, kind of like what the Yubari maybe has, let's see, and the answer is no to that as well. She's got main armaments modification 1, which is by the way what I recommend, as well as these very generic ones, again recommending aiming systems mod 1, and finally in the last one, get Damacon 1, because why not? So nothing special in terms of her upgrades or her consumables. Yeah, the ship is just very, very blah. The one thing that she does benefit from, of course, is basic firing training, advanced firing training. So I will spec the captain and I'll show you what she looks like after getting spec'd. In terms of captain skills, on the first row, I would recommend you get situational awareness, although with 5.9 and the skill becoming universal to all captains without needing to be trained, you can definitely get basic firing training first. And then on the second row, go for last stand on your first pass. Then get vigilance because seeing torpedoes early is helpful. Then get advanced firing training because you need that range. There's still some sort of debate within myself about concealment expert versus demo expert. I guess either one. If you want more fires, get demo. If you want to be a little more stealthy, get concealment. I think concealment's important, but some other people might disagree with me. I would recommend concealment though. Okay, so once you get through the first 15 skills, with the remaining 4 points, actually 3 points, sorry, because I'm only assuming you have an 18-point captain, I would say get basics of survivability and then get expert marksman with those 3 points, or you can save those and maybe get high alert. Could be an alternative. So, now that I've spec'd the captain this way, let's take a look at the ship and the changes. Yay, all of a sudden 16.2 kilometer firing range, which is helpful. Your guns will at least reach out and touch somebody now. Thank God for that, because it's the only redeeming feature about these guns. Reload speed is a little bit better, 8.3 seconds, still absolutely garbage compared to the other cruisers with small guns. Yeah, in terms of AA, it's a little bit better, but not really all that great. And of course, detectability drops down to 11.7. If you fire your guns, that's 15.6. So you do have a small, very, very small Invisifire buffer, but don't expect to use that all that much. And so that's pretty much all we can say about the Krasny Krym. I should just start calling it the Crappy Krym, but anyways, and let's take a look at her in battle, and I'll share whatever wisdom I have about the ship in battles. Alright, so this was actually my very first battle in the Crappy Krym. And I do okay, and I actually did okay in all my battles with her. The one other thing I forgot to mention earlier is that you do get to go into tier 7 battles with the ship. And all I can really say to you is if you end up in a tier 7 battle, good luck, have fun, and start praying to whatever god you believe in for a little bit of help, because while the ship is okay when you're dealing with tier 5, tier 4 ships, if you go up against tier 7 stuff, you really aren't gonna do all that great, as most tier 7 ships are gonna be able to, well, they're gonna be able to kick you around without any issues at all. After all, this is really a tier 4 ship. Playstyle wise, your primary targets are destroyers. If you notice, couple things. One, the guns do have a pretty flat arc, to like 10 kilometers, like only 6-second shell flight times, which is pretty good. And also, when you fire the shells, well, the dispersion isn't all that bad, as they do tend to hit the target you're aiming at. So it's not all bad, but I did mention before that, you know, her guns are destroyer guns, so you're okay against destroyers, but when you go up against things that are a little bit more armored, you start to feel just how weak your shots really become. In this case, I've got an enemy Myogi 13 kilometers away from me. So how you sort of want to deal with this is stay between sort of 13, 14 kilometers, ideally behind cover if you can, and just start throwing lots and lots and lots of HE in their direction and hope for fires. Again, your fire chance isn't all that great, so you are going to be firing a lot of shells before you actually get fires. And of course, with the not so great reload rate, you can tell it takes a while before you're able to get off another salvo. Against battleships, you either want to stay sort of further away, or you YOLO rush and hope for the best. So, hurrah! You know, just kind of rush in there, angle as best as you can, dodge like a maniac, and drop torpedoes, and hope your torpedoes will do well. The Krasny Krym does actually have pretty decent torpedo arcs. I gotta give it something to it, I guess. Its torpedo arcs are actually pretty good, so you are actually able to pull that kind of stuff off. So here we go, you can tell against this Myogi, I'm just trying to stay at a range where the Myogi's shots might not be all that great against me, while lobbing as many shots as I can at it. Again, the dispersion is really good, as you do see my shots landing in a nice clumped up little block, so you will get a good number of hits, but again, like I mentioned before, your shells are pathetic, and you're kind of lucky to really get any kind of damage against armored stuff. Your ideal targets would be destroyers, but then again, destroyers are way faster than you, and you have no concealment to save your life, so you really have to get into one of those surprise positions against destroyers where the destroyer doesn't expect you to pop out and you just sort of suddenly jump out and go, "Hi, I'm here, pew 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 pew." That's really all I can think of. So as you can tell, here's what I'm doing, which is hiding behind an island, killing a couple of mountain goats there. Actually, those would be inhabitants inside that town, not necessarily mountain goats. If I shot a little bit higher, those would be the mountain goats. Anyways, so you're basically going to just lob shots over islands and hope you're able to land a couple of hits here and there and start a few fires here and there. As you can tell, when I do even land full salvos of 5, 6, 7 shells, the damage isn't anything great. See, I track my shots, and you can tell it takes a while for me to actually get a reload going. This is with basic firing training and everything. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, this ship is just not very impressive. In fact, this entire battle, I feel like I got helped out a lot by my team CVs, actually. A lot of times I had these targets where I was able to get some free fire damage because the CVs had gone in and bombed something and flooded, and then I was able to sort of mop up with some fires and HE. Okay, so at this stage of the battle, our team has no caps, so I'm like, alright, I see a destroyer in the B cap. It looks kind of alone. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take care of that destroyer. And then if I take care of the destroyer, maybe I can go deal with the cap. Again, you can see that I'm trying my hardest to avoid other cruisers. I'm trying my hardest to avoid battleships. In fact, I'm kind of trying hard to avoid just about everything. Thank God the CVs didn't figure out that I was a vulnerable target, or I feel like I would probably been bombed to hell a little bit more by the enemy CVs. But lucky, lucky. Okay, so finally, there we go. This is what I'm talking about. Surprise destroyers. Like, you come out and go, hey, look, I'm here, and the destroyer might not be expecting you. And your shots do have a tendency... Not that one. That was a horrible shot. What was I aiming? All right. So you will end up getting some decent shots in against destroyers, and you're going to be able to do some decent damage against destroyers. There we go. There's almost 2,000 damage, and I took out, I believe, the rudder, and do some more damage. So it does have things that it can do reasonably well. But like I mentioned earlier, it really has a lot to do with surprise! You have to have that in order to really be that sort of successful ship. You really don't have that rate of fire, so if you run into a destroyer and you don't catch it off guard, the destroyer can very easily either run away from you, as you do not have the speed to chase, or it can even just hit smoke and just annoy you with its shells. So those are things to consider. Okay, so here's a situation I didn't really want to be in, which is 8 kilometers away from a battleship. This is not an ideal position. Luckily for me, I was saved by my carriers. As you can see, there are 3 squadrons of torpedo bombers heading for this Myogi, so thank God I was saved. The rate of fire, see, this is the thing. If this ship had a better rate of fire, I think these guns would actually be somewhat usable, as you could just sort of pinprick everything to death. But the rate of fire is just really, really slow, and the guns just do not do enough damage for it to really feel like you're contributing anything actively to the battle. And most hits against this Myogi are doing very little to almost no damage. One thing to keep in mind about the Krasny Krym is the gun placement. It's kind of in a way like St. Louis. It's a porcupine. You have guns facing every which direction. So the one advantage you have in the ship is pretty much you never have to wait for turrets to really traverse, as anywhere you turn, there's always going to be guns, which, by the way, does actually lead to a certain type of playstyle where it's a little bit like an Omaha, actually. You swing your ship in one direction, get the guns out on one direction, swing your ship the other way, fire the guns on the other side, and wiggle around a lot. Ideally, what you want to do is actually when you're trying to bow in and you're trying to rush down the enemy ship, you can sort of swing your ship a little bit to the left, fire those guns, swing the ship a little bit to the right, fire those guns, left, right, rinse, repeat, to your heart's... what's that phrase again? Dang it. I am seriously not speaking English today. What is wrong? To your heart's content. There we go. Brain going and doing derpy things. You do notice, actually... You do notice that I'm not actually getting that forward gun off. You will notice that the one forward gun does not fire, even when I go like sort of bow in, and that's because, like I mentioned earlier, that secondary turret, that very helpful secondary turret, blocks it from firing. So yeah, that's kind of frustrating that when you really need a gun, you don't really get it. As you can see, I'm to the best of my ability doing this little wiggle thing, kind of wiggling one direction, getting the guns away, wiggling the other direction, getting the guns off. So on and so on and so forth, and hoping for the best. Eventually, you of course get close enough to something where your torpedoes do finally play a role. So yay, here I am, like finally close to a kilometer. Great torpedo arcs. That's like one thing that the ship has got going for it. So land 3 torpedoes and do not do enough damage, but thank God you've got those great torpedo arcs to the rear too. So just swing your ship around, bring the other torpedoes to bear, and fire those torpedoes off as well. I nearly lost this Congo kill as well, actually, to the CV, as the CV actually came in with torpedo bombers. But at least I got the kill. So good. So remember, if you're in a Krasny Krym, in a crappy Krym, and you see battleships, you either do option A, run the hell away and rain as many HE shells at them as you can, or YOLO into that battleship and hope you're able to get torpedoed off. Sort of one or the other. One other thing I forgot to mention. The ship appears, keyword, it appears to have at times a maximum of an 8-gun broadside. Unless you go full broadside, you never really get that 8-gun broadside. One of the guns has a really crappy arc, so mostly you're hoping to get a 7-gun broadside. And if you're using that method of left, right kind of bow in style of fighting, you're going to get maybe like 4 or 5 shells a side maximum. So, Krasny Krym, yeah, God, what do I say about this ship? All right, let's sum her up. Her armor is okay. Her HP is meh. Her guns are just terrible. The range is okay. The arc is okay, but everything else is just terrible. Really should not be a tier 5 ship. Like really, if this was a tier 4 premium, I can see it. A tier 5 ship where you are using these guns and facing off against potential tier 7 enemies, that's just... I cannot wrap my head around that. The torpedoes are substantially worse than that of the Murmansk, which, again, begs the question, what's the purpose of the ship? Her maneuverability, her concealment, that's just all really poor. So yeah, this ship, God. I mean, I guess the arcs are good, and if you YOLO successfully, you can torp someone. I guess that's a positive. The ship is just, I'm really trying hard to try to dig up positives here. I mean, she's fun at the lower tiers, but like I said, you do get into like mid-tier battles, and those are just painful and something that should really be a tier 4. So that pretty much does it. And of course, let's answer the all-important question. Should you buy the ship? No. 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 I'm looking at you now with evil eyes. No, don't you buy the ship. Unless, of course, you fit into 2 categories of people. Category number 1, I wipe my butt with $20 bills. Then, okay. You know, if you have money to throw away, then sure. Or 2, you are obsessive compulsive ship collector and you absolutely have to have every single ship in the world in your port, then sure, fine. If you fit into those 2 categories of people, then knock yourself out and buy the ship. If you are anybody else, I would seriously suggest passing on this thing, because this ship is... I cannot for the life of me figure out what the people who tested the ship, I cannot understand how they okayed this ship to be at this tier when she so clearly doesn't belong. This ship is okay at tier 4, facing tier 5, max tier 6 enemies. I cannot see the ship being at tier 5, taking on tier 7 enemies at all. Just no way. This ship should never have been released at this tier. So it just makes me utterly crazy as to why somebody was able to say, yeah, this is fine, and then they authorized it and they released it. Just terrible decisions. Anyways, very first battle in the ship. So okay, 87,000 damage is good. 1697 base experience is good in a tier 5 battle. A good amount of damage. As you can tell, if you look at the HE damage and everything, wasn't all that much. Credit-wise, alright, it wasn't all that bad. Sure, I had a bonus 70,000 credits from a mission, so, you know, all was okay. But I still wouldn't recommend getting this ship. Anyways, folks, that does it for this ship review. Take care, have a good one, and I'll talk to all of you again soon.